I wrote a play which was performed in Tibetan. It's for a Tibetan company, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was touring in Germany and Austria last year. So I was on that tour. It was such a baffling thing for me sitting in the audience because I was watching a show in Tibetan, which I don't understand. The subtitles are in German, which I don't understand. There are Tibetan actors and there are German audiences. I'm like one person who's sitting there, who's the writer of this show, who understands neither of these languages, but is sitting and watching it. It's a totally different experience to watch a show like that compared to... So what you're looking for while you're with the audience there is very different than if I'm, watching a Hindi play in Delhi, for example.
Can I zoom in on this? What role does language play? Because when you were studying, you've often said that there was a moment where you were struggling to find your internal image.
Yeah.
And then one day, a Polish friend took you to watch a Polish group and
Yes.
they were performing in that language. And when you were watching them, something clicked inside you about the power of language. Next day in class, you spoke in Bangla for the
Yes.
first time, and all your friends even mentioned to you that there's a certain shift that they've noticed. So what role does language play? When you wrote Dvipa, you wrote it in Bangla.
Yeah.
It was performed in Kannada. There was an English version as a bridge. Does a play reside in a language? Does language house a certain story? Does it become a primary driving influence, or is language just a tool? Any story can be written in any language, doesn't matter.
Your research is very good. I don't know why you were underplaying your good research in the first question.
I was just saying, hold on and wait till you see if there are 10 questions which are researched or not.
It's very well researched. I think, let me answer it in two ways. As a maker, language is very important, right? I write those plays in English which are about societies which don't speak Hindi or Bangla. So my play about Kashmir is in English because I don't speak Kashmiri. Or the play about Tibet is in English because I don't speak Tibetan. But if I have to write about a world where people speak Hindi, then I would write it in Hindi or Urdu or Bengali, right? Now, of course, all of this gets translated to other languages and other companies do it in whatever, like the Hindi plays happen in English, the English play happen. That's a different matter. But while writing, it is important for me to know which world I am inside. What is the world that inhabits the story? I'm not talking about the audience, but where are the characters from? I think we think different things in each language. The thoughts I have in Hindi are not the thoughts I have in English. English is a language which, of course, I have learned right from school, and so I don't think I'm particularly good or bad at it, but it's a language which is there. Bengali I spoke at home. Kannada, now I'm in Karnataka for such a long time. I lived in Bangalore for many years. I have family in Karnataka, and of course, so you get all these languages. But the thoughts in each can often be very different, right? So while creating it is a different kind of thing.
When you're writing a play in Hindi, are you thinking in English and translating
No,
it?
not at all.
Okay.
When I'm writing in Hindi, I'm thinking in Hindi. When I'm writing in Bangla, I'm thinking in Bangla. When I'm devising in or writing in English, I'm thinking in English.
But typically you have like a primary language that you think in, right? And then when you're speaking, maybe you're doing a translation.
I don't think so, actually.
No?
I think till my generation, and I think even now in India, many people are multilingual, quite naturally. You speak to in one language with your parents, one language in your neighborhood, one language in school. So this much is there. This multilingualism is not the multilingualism of the West. Because in the West, when you're multilingual, but in the West, I mean in Europe or America, when you're multilingual, you are multilingual because you've learned there is like a primary and then there are secondary languages. Like in school, you have learned Spanish as the second language.
Yeah. French.
Yeah, that's not the same thing as learning Hindi or Urdu or Bengali in your neighborhood or with your family and going and learning English in school, right? It's
consuming content, watching Hindi movies, reading books.
It's a totally different thing. Like I remember when I grew up in Delhi, right? So when the first time I was doing shows in Bombay, I was with a crew from Bombay, and I realized that they are completely amused at my Hindi. Then I figured that, okay, their Hindi is totally different from my Hindi because they have this own thing. They have their own, Now, for instance, because I worked in Bombay a lot, I sort of know what to say. But even within Hindi, there are so many kinds of Hindi, right? So that is one thing. In terms of staging plays, I think it's really most fun for me to watch when it is in the natural language of the audience. So the audience is Hindi speaking and you have a Hindi play. The audience is Kannada speaking, then there is not that plays should not travel outside. I think it's very important for plays to perform outside of their region and outside of their language. And one gets a lot. Like the theater is its own language. It's not just the spoken word. Like theater is its own form. It's actually not a music plus text plus sound. It's not the sum of the parts. It has its own logic. But I enjoy it very much, when my Hindi play is running in a place where there are Hindi speakers in the audience. Some of the best shows I have seen are when we are performing in Gorakhpur or Allahabad or somewhere, where the audience is cued into every little word of the play. When you translate it to English, I think if there are English audiences, of course, they can connect to it. But if you do an English play in Gorakhpur, there is a distance. There is a gap.
But you're saying if a Tibetan play performed in German to a German audience is far better than a Tibetan play performed in the Tibetan language with subtitles?
Well, with the Tibetan play, it's different. Only with certain languages, because the political contest is about language, right? A Tibetan play in Tibetan anywhere in the world is better than a Tibetan play in any other language. Because you don't get to hear Tibetan. Tibetan as a language is being wiped out.
You're conveying a message by just housing that play in
By
Tibetan.
just the fact that you're hearing, one of the fascinating things about the Tibetan production of Pah-La is that when they were speaking, and I was looking at the subtitles, the English subtitles, because we opened in India and we performed many shows in India. I was looking at the English subtitles. I realized that they have a Tibetan word for every word that I have written. So can you imagine, like there is train, there is weather, there is telephone, there is... Now in Hindi also you have words, but you don't really use them. You don't say Durbhash. You say telephone, right? It would be absurd. It would be forced if inside a place suddenly somebody said Durbhash. You can say rail gadi for train, but a lot of people would just use train, right? It would have to be a very specific world or time in the play for somebody to say rail gadi. A character of a certain generation or some will say rail gadi. But in the Tibetan play, and we were performing to Tibetan audiences all the time. We performed a lot of Tibetan settlements, apart from, the usual Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore thing. People came with their own chairs. When the auditorium got filled, they came with their own chairs from their houses. They sat down and they watched the play. And they had no difficulty because they had a word for everything that was written in English. So Tibetan is a very unique situation. And I think that applies to maybe many other languages in the world where the language itself is being politically wiped out or being contested. But in all kind of dominant languages, I would think if you watch a Hindi play in German in Germany, the way it would land would be very different if you did it in Hindi. Now, we have to keep in mind that the actor's body is a very big part of the theater. Right? And how you use your body completely changes with the language. So an actor who has grown up in Lucknow and is Hindi speaking, when that actor performs a Hindi speaking character versus an actor who's grown up in Freiburg and has doing the play in Germany, a very good actor in German language, might be able to convey the text well, but the body is very different.
You said sharir badal jata hai.
Total, completely, you can see it anywhere. When people have an argument, so easily we slip into our mother tongue, right?
Even you said the audience ka sharir badal jata hai.
Yeah.
When they're watching a Hindi play, audience sits a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we have, at least in India, English is still a language which is which brings a kind of class consciousness to it. No? English is the language of a certain kind of
You're educated,
educated, and so we have these kind of you watch a play in English and you are sort of watching it in a certain way. I think the Britishness of what was 20 years ago has moved now to a kind of Americanness. Now children in schools, I think they speak Netflix. They don't speak English or Hindi or Bangla. They speak the language of Netflix. You can listen to a 10-year-old and say whether they have Netflix at home or not. Immediately, you can tell. Right? Which is just a reality, which is where they are right now. So the audience, it watches differently, I think. Different kinds of things.